I want to talk tonight about a new way of looking at paying down debt. I call it the cash cascade, and it simply says this: imagine that you have three debts represented, and these are poker chips. And I guess taking on debt is a little bit like gambling. You're hoping that your financial life is going to change dramatically, and somehow or other everything's going to turn out right. But what these three piles of poker chips represent is the black ones are two high interest debts. One is your car. Another one are your credit cards, and this other pile here is a lower interest debt. So these are about 10 to 20%. The car is around 20%. So the credit card's around 20%. The car's around 14%. You probably think it's less, but there are hidden fees, and the way they calculate the loans push the loans up sometimes. And then you've got some student debt, which is quite low. It's around about 2.5 to 3.5%, but a reasonably large amount. So what normally happens with these sorts of debts is that you're contractually bound to make a minimum payment each month. So what you do is you earn your month's salary, represented by these chips here, and obviously it's a small pile, it's not as big as you would like. In fact, it's probably disproportionately large in relation to these debts, but I didn't want to so I'll make that a bit smaller. There you go. So that's probably a bit more representative of your month's salary, maybe even less than that. There you go. So these paltry few chips here represent how much you earn each month, and with that you're supposed to somehow pay down this debt. And what you normally do is take some of this money here and you apply towards the minimum payments on each of those. So the way that the credit card companies and the way the car companies normally work is that it's not in their interest to have you pay off debt. So they choose a very small amount each month that you are required to take away your minimum payment that you make each month to pay off the debt. So you're contractually obligated to make it. So 2 of those on the big debt and 1 of each of those on the smaller debts, which comes out of your salary here. Okay. So you do. Unfortunately, though, you're accruing interest every month as well because you're not paying down your debts quick enough. So you can find that your loans can roughly stay the same for a very long period of time. In fact, if you're just making minimum payments, it's very, very difficult to pay down those debts at all. And look, we're practically where we started at the beginning of the month, at the next month. And this is how the credit card companies work. They love it when you make minimum payments. Car companies get you to pay off your debts over a very long period of time, so you're not paying 3 or 4 times the price of the car. And your student loans, of course, are just running there, and you'll get to them as soon as you can. So there are many ways and schemes that have been brought out to pay down debt, and one of them is called the debt avalanche. And the debt avalanche simply says take your biggest, highest interest rate debt first, and let's call it this car debt. Let's say that that's your highest interest rate debt. Let's say that's your 20% one, this is your 15% one, and this is your 2.5% one. So the credit card avalanche says take your highest interest rate debt first and keep paying your minimum payments on those. And what you need to do is find some extra payment from your income over and above what you would normally pay. So instead of just paying one of these per month, the only way you're going to get ahead is unfortunately dig deeper into your income, spend a little bit less, and maybe pay 2 of these each month. So maybe start applying 20% of your month's salary towards debt repayment rather than just trying to save 10% per month as most financial people will tell you to do. So what you do is you take that money and you start applying it to paying down this debt first. Okay. So this is what we're basically paying every month. We're paying this from our income and these minimum payments on the debts. So it's these 6 chips. Now what happens is over a period of time you pay down this debt. It'll take you quite a while, but eventually you do it by going through the same process, using those 6 chips every month. Eventually you pay off that debt. Then what the debt repayment strategy says is keep using these same 6 chips even though you no longer need to make the minimum payment on the debt we just complete. Pretend you need to make the minimum payment still. Apply exactly the same 6 chips as we applied last month, even though it wasn't paid off, to paying off the next highest interest rate debt, which is that one. And pretty soon, as you can see, by applying all those chips to it, this one will disappear, and then you can work on your lowest interest rate one next. That's the debt avalanche. The debt snowball, which is from Dave Ramsey, says something a little bit different. What he says is that the human mind works on psychology. It's very difficult for you to make payments on a big, expensive loan and stick to it completely. So what you need to do is give yourself some big wins. So what you need to do is sort your debts in order of size and tackle the smallest size debt first. So let's say that's 5,000, let's say that's 7,000, let's say that's 10,000. So we start off paying off the $5,000 debt. So we take all our minimum payments and make those payments off each loan, just like we did before. And we take these extra payments from our bank account, which we have to make, so the extra payment there, and we start applying that to the smallest debt. And pretty quickly we pay that one off. So we score a quick psychological win. And then we start working on the next debt in size, which is that one. And so these two disappear, and then apply the same money to that one. But in all those cases, the key is that we're paying the same amount every month. The minimum payments on all those debts, whether we paid them off or not, plus the extra money that we save from our bank accounts, and we're applying each of those to all the debts until they are all completely paid off. So that's the debt. That's the debt snowball and the debt avalanche, and they're both fairly similar. The debt avalanche is obviously more efficient, and Dave Ramsey maintains that the debt snowball gives you quick wins, so it keeps you psychologically beefed up to go tackle that big debt and succeed in paying it off. And by the time all your debts are finished, you can live debt-free. The problem is, as we know, that living debt-free is not going to make us wealthy. That's not the subject of this video, but if you subscribe to that theory, what's going to happen after we pay off all of these debts here? So we take them all away, and what we're now going to do is, after a few months, we're going to save up some money, and magically we're going to enter into what we call some good debt. We're going to buy a house. So now we've paid off all of that debt just before. We've taken months or years to pay it off, and what's the first thing we do as soon as we can? We go and incur new debt. And why do we go do that? Because the other debt is bad debt, and this debt is what's called good debt, because it's for our financial future. We're buying a house that will appreciate. Maybe we're buying the house to live in, or maybe we're buying it to rent out, but it's good debt. And here's where we make a mistake. What we've just done is we've just replaced one lot of debt with another lot of debt. And the interesting thing is that we've done is that we've taken debt, in this case it's 2.5% interest rate, low interest rate debt, and we've replaced it with the same amount of higher interest rate debt. Let's say a mortgage is at 6 or 7%, plus some extra there that we need because the mortgage is bigger. But we've basically replaced cheap interest rate debt with expensive debt. Why would we do that? And the answer is, of course, we shouldn't do that. So I've created a process that I call a debt cascade, and it goes something like this. It's that you've got to use the debt avalanche for this. You've got to work on paying off your high interest rates debt first. So we go through that process and pay these two high interest rate debts off, and when we've completed them, instead of paying off this low interest rate student loan, this 2.5% loan, what we start doing is we keep paying our minimum payment on it, but the minimum payments on the other two debts that we no longer need to make, we keep making them to ourselves. We take that extra money that we use to apply to pay off those debts, so we make the minimum payment on this one, and the rest, the other 5 chips this time, we accumulate. And we accumulate them until we've got enough in reserve, that we've got an amount equal roughly to that debt. Okay, so now this time it isn't debt. In fact, I'll replace that with white. I can't replace it with white chips. Okay, so now this isn't debt anymore. This is money we've built up in the bank account by not paying down this 2.5%. What we do pretty quickly is build up in our bank account an amount of money about the same. Let's say this is $10,000. What we've done is built up cash in our bank account of $10,000. What can we do with $10,000 cash in the bank? Very simple. We don't spend it because that would be stupid, because basically it's really borrowed money. Even though it's in our bank account in cash, it's actually borrowed money because we've still got that debt sitting there. So what we've really done is built up $10,000 of 2.5% debt. We can use that cash to go and buy, ideally an investment property, or maybe our first house if we don't have one. Now with $10,000 in this example, we won't get a very big house. Maybe we'll get a small condo, but the point is we can get off and running probably a year or 2 years early, maybe longer than we could have otherwise. So we've now got this deposit. We go and borrow some money that's necessary to buy this investment property, which will take a lot more green chips, of course, to do that. That's all funded at the bank. And what we're doing now is we're paying off this 2.5% student loan at the minimum rate every single month. We don't care if we pay it off now. We don't care if we pay it off later. We don't care if we pay it off ever, because it's 2.5%. And this property here is increasing value all the time. And we've saved ourselves 6% borrowings on the money that's sitting in there. So that's a debt cascade. I'll do a post about it. I'll post this video with it. Sit down, think about it, pull out some poker chips, and you'll see that this is a way to make the financial freedom purely risk-free, very sensible, and replaces bad debt with good debt.